In the Jetterman family, Holly is the middle child in a trio. Her older sister Vanessa is the pretty one, and her younger brother Troy is the smart one. Their father Paul is rather clueless, but luckily Holly has her mother Victoria, who likes doting on her. The two of them have a very close relationship, and Holly likes to wear the kaleidoscope her mother gifts her on her necklace. Unfortunately, Victoria dies of cancer while Holly is still a preteen, and things begin to change. Holly feels like she's fading without her mother, and she notices it in the way others treat her. Paul forgets to ask about her day after asking her siblings, and even the teacher at school ignores her raised hand. By the end of summer, Holly has become completely invisible, her family can't even see her, and she won't show up in pictures either. Her family stats using her bedroom as storage, not even noticing she's gone because Holly has effectively disappeared from memory too. As years pass, Holly learns to adapt. She's gotten an apartment in a building that does corporate rentals where nobody knows anybody, so she fits right in. She's put up a sign on the door for delivery men to leave her orders there without having to talk to her, and she's also got a job as paparazzi. Thanks to her invisibility, Holly can sneak inside VIP places and take pictures of celebrities while they're doing something scandalous. Then she sells these pictures to editor Ron by sending them through texts, but she likes to hang out at his office to gather information as well. While they still can't see her, Holly also likes visiting her family. Troy still lives in the old house, although he's moved to the basement for the view that inspires his visual arts career. Victoria got married, and Paul is now working in real estate. They get together every Friday for dinner, and Holly shows up as well, although she leaves quickly because it's a rather depressing affair. There are parts of being invisible that Holly likes, like being able to go everywhere, seeing everything, and not needing to worry about manners, clothes, or shame. The worst part, however, is not being part of anything. One night, Holly is following another celebrity into a bar when she's suddenly grabbed by bouncer Shane, who surprisingly can see her. Holly has hundreds of questions for him, but Shane ignores her and just does his job by kicking her out. The next day, Holly visits her mother's grave and remembers Victoria's promise saying she'll always be with her daughter in spirit. Sometime later, Holly realizes she's seen the bouncer's face before and checks the tabloid she works for. Indeed, Shane had been one of the many men she's caught cheating on camera. Doing some internet research, Holly learns the basics about him. Shane used to be a famous MMA fighter and world champion. He even dated popular actress and supermodel Juliana. But once Holly made those pictures go viral, the couple broke up, Shane's fans turned against him and his life spiraled out of control. After being arrested for DUI, his career finally came to an end after losing the championship to fellow fighter Mate. Feeling awful for ruining Shane's life, Holly goes to the bar again to apologize to him and offers to make it up to him by cleaning his reputation. Shane's furious with her and doesn't want her anywhere near him, but Holly convinces him to give her at least 5 minutes to show her skills. A moment later, Shane meets with his manager to discuss an incoming event, and Holly freaks him out a bit by sitting next to the manager and reading his text messages. Shane doesn't understand what's going on but plays along because Holly points out all the ways the manager is lying, including trying to pay Shane less than what the event offers. After Shane demands to be paid what he deserves and reaches an agreement, he leaves the bar to have a talk with Holly, who explains she's invisible. Shane still doesn't believe her, so Holly decides to prove it by stepping in front of an oncoming cab. She almost gets hit, but Shane pushes her out of the way just in time and finally believes her when the driver notices him but not her. It seems Shane is the only person that can see her in the entire world, but he doesn't know what to do about it, thus Holly confesses she thinks they're connected and should help each other. Shane invites Holly to come by his apartment later to have a talk, and Holly visits in the morning, ignoring Shane's three-legged dog because animals can't see her either. Then, Holly explains his theory. She wasn't always invisible, and Shane wasn't always unpopular, so she thinks that by helping him she may regain her visibility as well. Shane decides to tell her a bit of his story, sharing that his stepfather kicked him out when he was a teen and how he found his calling in fighting while defending himself from bullies. In fact, he's still fighting nowadays, just not professionally. Holly goes to see his next fight at a small local gathering and finds it rather barbaric, especially since Shane is only paid $300 for it. This inspires Shane to explain a passion behind the sport that Holly can't see, but he does agree when she says he needs to get better fights in bigger venues. The problem is that nobody important wants to fight him because he doesn't sell tickets, but Holly promises to take care of that. When she returns home, Holly researches the most popular fighters and finds out Suarez has been accused of using steroids. By sneaking into his house, she manages to take a picture of his pill bottle and sends it to him in order to blackmail him. Afterward, Holly visits Shane and while waiting for an important call, they bond while she shares some stories about her mother. Their conversation is interrupted by Shane's manager calling him with big news. Suarez has accepted to fight Shane in 6 weeks thanks to Holly's plan. The following days, while his manager promotes the fight on the radio, Shane works hard on his training and Holly takes the chance to take some pictures of him for publicity. She would love to go see the fight, but she doesn't do well in crowds. Last time she tried, she got badly hurt. Shane thinks that if she's going to watch the fight on TV she should at least do it at his apartment, and Holly accepts. The night of the event, Shane surprises everyone by winning, although his manager pays him less than promised under the excuse of taxes. After the fight, a reporter is shocked to see Shane isn't going out to celebrate, but Shane corrects him by saying he's celebrating in his own way. He returns to the apartment and, after grabbing some ice cream and his dog, Shane invites Holly to the roof because it has an amazing view. He thanks Holly for her support but also wonders if she's real, because he knows fighters sometimes begin seeing things after too many hits to the head. Holly is insulted by this dismissal of her persona, so Shane clarifies he does want her to be real, and proves it by kissing her. At that moment, the reporter finds them and takes a picture of them before running away, but they decide to let him go because Holly can't show up in the photograph. Then, the couple continues making out, and Shane gives Holly her first time. The next day, Holly sees the newspaper and discovers with glee that she does appear in the picture, although luckily the lack of light protects her identity. Meanwhile, Shane is at a press conference with his next opponent, Bones. Shane confirms he's fired his manager when he's asked about it, but when the subject of the girl in the picture comes up, he dodges the question. After the conference is over, Holly follows Bones to his car and sends him some text to let him know she is proof he spent the night with a minor. To keep her silence, Bones accepts to lose the fight against Shane on purpose. In the evening, Holly picks up Shane at the bar to celebrate her appearance in the picture, which means she's slowly coming back. Their date is interrupted by a call from Juliana, who congratulates Shane on his victory and wishes him good luck for the oncoming fight. She sounds genuinely happy for him, but Holly thinks she's acting. In her eyes, it's obvious that Juliana's contacting him again because he's winning, otherwise she wouldn't have cared. Shane doesn't like this attitude of hers, even if Holly swears she's just looking out for him. On the day of the fight, Shane beats Bones easily thanks to Holly's meddling. Now that he's in everyone's mouths again, Holly tries to send his training pictures to Ron, but he doesn't think they're scandalous enough to publish. Then Holly changes tactics and invents a rumor saying Mate has accepted to rematch Shane. After so many years of trustworthy information, Ron believes her and publishes the story. The next day, Mate receives a call from his manager to arrange the fight. Mate doesn't want to rematch someone he already beat, but with the story out there, his manager leaves him no choice if they want to stay on the public's good graces. Holly sneaks into Mate's house to find something she can use for blackmail, but unfortunately, Mate is clean. Later, Holly visits her sister and discovers she's pregnant, but for some reason she won't tell her husband, causing Holly to believe there's an affair going on. In the evening, Ron sends Holly to a bar where Juliana has been seen having a date to get some pictures. However, when she's there, Holly is shocked to see that Juliana is having a drink with Shane and holding his hand. Furious, Holly snaps at him before leaving the building, and Shane goes after her to explain. Holly is important to him, but he and Juliana have a history together. And while Holly is fun to hang out with, to the rest of the world she isn't real, and Shane doesn't like looking crazy in public. Holly is done with him, which works just fine because she couldn't find anything on Mate anyway, and this is how Shane finds out she's been fixing his fights. Furious at the lack of trust and having been made into a fraud, Shane sends Holly away. Holly goes back to his regular paparazzi job and tries her best to ignore the news when they show Shane has gotten back together with Juliana. A few days later, while Holly is getting drunk at her apartment, Shane surprises her with a visit because he feels he needs to confess something. The pictures Holly had taken of Shane cheating hadn't been the reason why he and Juliana broke up or why he lost the fight. When Shane's career exploded, he thought he didn't have to work anymore and got lazy. Juliana and he were both cheating on each other all the time, and when things finally fell apart because of the pictures, Shane wasn't able to handle it. Holly realizes this was never her fault, which explains why it didn't bring her visibility back. Shane wants to make it up to her, so Holly tries to kiss him, but Shane pushes her away, explaining he wants to be a better man now and cheating is out of the question. He also thinks Holly needs to look at what happened to her in a new light and face the truth. Insulted by the implication she wants her life to be like this, Holly kicks Shane out and throws a tantrum, breaking her mother's kaleidoscope in the process. The next morning, Holly gets terribly upset when she discovers she can't see herself in the mirror anymore. Desperate for answers, he goes to see Shane at the gym, but he can't see her anymore either. While Holly wanders around the city without knowing what to do, Shane is visited by Juliana, who is glad to see him training because she doesn't date losers. She swears that comment it's just a joke, but Shane starts to doubt her intentions and wonders if she would have called him if he hadn't been raising to fame again. Back to Holly, she begins to think she may not have much time left before disappearing for good and decides to visit her family one last time to say goodbye. First it's Vanessa, who still hasn't told her husband about the pregnancy. Holly decides to kick the trash can to reveal the pregnancy test, and her brother-in-law is delighted to see they'll have a baby, but Vanessa is scared. All her life she's been nothing but a pretty face and her mom played favorites with another sibling, so she doesn't feel worthy to be a mother. Her husband comforts her and promises they'll be great parents, but Holly is left in shock at these confessions because she never saw this side of her sister before. Next, Holly visits Troy and takes a look at the movie he's making, which she decides it's quite good. When Troy's crush walks by the window, Holly rushes outside and makes her trip, causing Troy to come out too to help. Now he finally gets to talk to the girl he likes, and Holly goes back inside to visit Paul. She can't help wondering why her dad never dates and why he works this much when he hates it. She also discovers a bunch of sleeping pills and 3 pictures of kaleidoscope art, which means Paul never got over his wife. Afterward, Holly walks with Paul to the cemetery as she realizes Shane had been right. She hadn't been seeing things the right way. Losing Victoria didn't happen to only her, it happened to her siblings and father too. They've been hurting all this time, and Holly had been so single-minded about her own loss that she never reached out to her family, expecting them to come to comfort her instead. She's never been there for anybody else, and now it's time to fix that. After apologizing to her father, Holly takes the bus and goes to see Shane's match against Mate, which is a risk because it means joining a crowd. Shane isn't doing well, so Holly sneaks into the ring to support him, holding his hand as she promises she's here for him no matter what. At that moment, Shane finally gets to see her again, but so does everyone else in the audience, including Juliana. Holly hasn't noticed though, and she stays outside the cage to keep cheering on Shane until security kicks her out. Shane finishes the match without her, and unfortunately, he loses only because of a tiny difference in points. After the match, Juliana shows Shane her sympathy but also lets him go see Holly. Shane hurries to the hallway and tells security Holly is with him, hugging her after the men leave. Holly admits Shane had been right about her life, and in return, Shane admits she had been right about Juliana, so he broke up with her, which means now they can kiss again. A few days later, Holly surprises her dad with a visit. Paul finally sees her again, thus father and daughter reunite with a warm hug. Make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you can watch more videos like this. Thanks for watching.